Hi, I'm Brooklyn Howell, and since you said we could, I will wear a hat. I don't normally wear a hat, so I did have to search around for this one a little bit, and I did find a little cowboy outfit in my house for some reason. But okay, so I'm gonna go through this. This is my psychological factors presentation. Here we go. My chosen population is female soccer players, and I specifically middle schoolers, and the general population of the same age and gender, so females, adolescents. I chose this because I'm a middle school soccer coach, so I have a team that mostly consists of girls who are between the age of 12 to 15. So any way that I can get to know them better and help them just as individuals, but also make a successful team with them too. And looking into the research and learning this course, these 8 weeks, has been that motivation, personal factors, and social pressures play a significant role in determining what these adolescent girls do and how their outlook is kind of shaped from where they are in those three areas. So I'll get started with the motivation area. And we know motivation kind of can be defined as what moves a person, what makes you do something. Most people don't do anything without much motivation or lack of motivation. So it's pretty much part of everything we do. And so what motivates adolescent females to be active? Or what motivates the soccer girls to be successful? And so we're going to look at a goal achievement motivation that was broken down into ego-oriented and task-oriented. With ego-oriented, and this study was done with a soccer team, so they're looking at specifically athletes, and the ego-oriented players viewed their individual success as determining the team's success. So how well they did determined if the team succeeded. Whereas task-oriented players looked at more social things about the team and being a part of the team, and those outside factors had much more of an influence on the success of the team versus their individual performance. And here we go. Coaches need to be able to identify if their players are ego or task-oriented players. Essentially, because if you know your players, because that plays into their motivation and how they are going to interpret and how they're going to handle wins and losses and differently. So you know how to address those players, but it's also going to determine how they practice, when you give them an assignment or when you give them a drill to do, how they're going to approach that drill and how they're going to approach team atmosphere. Sometimes ego-oriented is okay, but sometimes too strong of an ego-oriented can be negative because those players see their own teammates as competition. And that can be negative, especially in building a cohesive unit as a team. So just something to be aware of that I hadn't thought of before in that way. And then we have intrinsic motivation, and competence can lead to positive correlations with physical activity. So even soccer players or just our general population, if we can encourage and find ways to have these girls, these adolescents, find intrinsic motivation and be competent, then that should lead to them more success of them being physically active, which is one of our goals being in the health profession. And then we'll transition into personal factors. Our personal factors really determine our behavior. They shape who we are and all play a role. And while we are in control of our choices, they play a big part. You can't say that they don't. And for this presentation, we'll be looking at self-esteem, self-efficacy, and anxiety specifically. And looking at what role does personal factors play? How does it really determine what we do? If we're looking at self-esteem, adolescent girls with lower self-esteem are more likely to be inactive. So, and self-esteem can be different. It's not necessarily completely low self-esteem. It can be more associated with physical activity. And the same thing with self-efficacy. If they have low self-efficacy in physical activity, they're less likely to do that. And for adolescent girls, and everybody else, even me, if there's something I'm not comfortable doing, I don't believe I can do a good job, or I don't think I'm going to be successful at it, I'm less likely to even attempt that, whatever it is. And so it takes, even as an adult, sometimes it takes me going, you got to do your best, we can do it, let's go. And so understanding that, especially in those adolescent girls, is important, knowing that them not doing something may not be because they just don't want to. It's they don't think they can. They're not comfortable, and that goes into anxiety. A study was done, and they found that adolescents who have anxiety enjoy PE less, and it makes sense to me. If you are anxious about a lot of things, PE, especially if you're not comfortable in a physical education setting, that's going to make me very anxious. And so I'm going to enjoy it less. There's not many things that when you're very anxious that people tend to enjoy. They like things that don't make them anxious. And so figuring out your athletes or even your students, or if you have an adolescent child, figuring out where they stand on those things and then helping them overcome those things. So if they're, and some things like we can't reduce all anxiety. Some of that is you have it anxiety or you don't. It can't be helped with exercise. But if there's things we can do to help, we can help. We can educate. We can walk through things with them. We can boost their self-esteem. And those can all lead to physical activity. Like it says right here, low self-esteem, low self-efficacy, and anxiety must be addressed for someone to continuously engage in physical activity. If they're low in all those areas, or high anxiety and low in self-esteem and self-efficacy, physical activity is probably not going to be at the top of their list of things they want to do. So we've got to address those in order to get them active now and lifelong. Now we're going to show social pressures. I don't think, where I'm at anyway, I could talk about adolescent female girls without talking about social pressures. Like I said, I coach a JV girls soccer team. Social pressures is something that comes up almost every day, and they don't realize it's social pressures, but as a coach now and somebody who's older, it's social pressures. They have a need to fit in. And Zook and his colleagues found out that that is especially true with their family and their friends, or their peers, not necessarily their friends. But people at school, people that they are around a lot, they want to be accepted. It's natural to want to fit in with the people that you encounter every day. And these adolescents are under constant pressure to be accepted pretty much wherever they are. And so that plays a role in their physical activity level. One of the biggest things that I did see while reading was autonomy. Adolescents, they are transitioning from going to their parents telling them everything they need to do and making most of their decisions to now they have to make decisions. They are doing things because they want to do things, and they're determining why. They're determining their motivation. It's now their choice and no longer just their parents telling them what to do. And they're being responsible for themselves. So now their actions and their choices, they have to live with the consequences, the rewards, the negatives. That is on them. And in a study, it was interesting that youth sports studies show that autonomy, competence, and relatedness had positive participation in youth sports. So those are all great things. So giving a healthy level of autonomy to adolescents is great. That doesn't mean leaving them on their own, you're on your own, because that has other issues and negative effects, even though they may be able to survive on their own without parental guidance and things, but that's not necessarily a safe level. And so, I forgot what it was, but I thought I put somewhere, they need, at the bottom right there, they need safe levels of autonomy from their parents to give them higher confidence, and higher confidence is linked to, if they have higher confidence, they're more likely to be physical active because they're more likely to be okay with trying new things or trying things they're not comfortable with. Now I'll skip back up and go to influence. Friend support is very important in adolescence, and especially when it comes to physical activity. If adolescent girls have friends who are active, they're more likely to be active. If their friends are, their friends are inactive, they're more likely to be inactive. And I think that goes along, and this is me speaking my opinion, I hadn't done the reading on it, into adulthood. If you have active friends, you're more likely to be active with them because that's what your friends are doing. But if they're inactive, you're more likely to be inactive with them. And so encouraging these girls to be active physically and then hopefully encourage their friends to be active as well is very important. And here's some things to think about. Some recommendations is promoting that intrinsic motivation. Wanting them to do it because they want to do it and it makes them feel good. And discovering ego versus task oriented. Even as individuals, if we know which ego versus task oriented we are, we can help even motivate ourselves and figure out our own worlds. But as a coach, I can use that definitely to help with my team, but also to improve their self-efficacy, self-esteem, and anxiety levels. It's a major part of adolescence, and we want to make them as comfortable as they can be so that way they can make choices, because they're starting to make choices at this point that are going to affect them long term. And some of them are choices they're making that will affect them the rest of their life. If they're active now, they're more likely to be active as adults, so we want to get them active. And then encouraging safe levels of autonomy and friend support. As coach, we see that autonomy. As a coach, I do it. I don't communicate with parents. I communicate with my players, and my players communicate with parents. And that's one of the reasons I do it. And now I see why I do it, and it makes it even stronger commitment for me to make sure that these players, especially if they're 13 and 14 years old, they get trusted enough to tell their parents things that I don't need to always tell their parents if it's not a issue that I think a parent needs to address or that the parent needs to handle. And so I do. Now I have some research to back it up why I choose to do things that way, and encourage them to find supportive friends who make them feel good and encourages them to be active. Now, a couple things to think about is promoting long-term physical activity. That is the long-term goal for most health professionals. Even as a soccer coach, my PE side kicks in a little bit, and I want them to be active long-term. Soccer will end for most of them. Soccer is not a sport most people end up playing long into adulthood. So at the end of the day, I'm very concerned about, are they going to keep moving as they get older? And so I want to be able to help promote that. And if I can take a little bit out of my soccer skill teaching and all those things and about winning and losing, then I think I have won and those girls have won, because they're going to be healthy. Because we know in a study by Zook and his colleagues that female adolescents, as they get older, they reduce physical activity. And so we want to try to fight that rate and encourage them to keep going. So if we can identify why this is happening, maybe we can better fight it. And I try not to go over too long, but that is my presentation. Here are my references, and I have another slide. Here it is, and that's all I got. Thank you for I was about to say semester, but a great 8 weeks. Like I said, that's it.